Welcome to the Pastor's Podcast. This is Pastor Scott, and with me today are a couple of our long-time global partners, Mike and Kelly McGregor. You're probably familiar with them. So, hi, Mike and Kelly.
Yeah. Hi, Scott. Hi, Cornerstone. We're excited to be with you today.
Many of you may also know, because Kelly has written for the last few years on our blog as well. I know a number of you have been blessed by that too. And it's been a crazy year for everybody, kind of a crazy year for you guys, but I just wanted to provide this opportunity to just give a bit of an update on how you guys are doing, what the Lord's been doing in your heart and life. I know it's something we've talked about a lot, but getting to share a little bit with the church more broadly. First of all, maybe before as we jump in, for those that are new to Cornerstone, for those that we've had a number of people join the church family, even just over the last year. Can you just remind us, for those that are newer, how long you were in Papua New Guinea, and what you were doing there and what you've been doing there over the last decade?
Well, yeah, we went to Papua New Guinea, I guess, at the very beginning of 2010. And so we've been there a little over 10 years. And it was what we were doing is we went with an organization that does church planning among unreached people groups in Papua New Guinea. And because of the lack of infrastructure there and roads access, and where most of these groups that we're targeting that are unreached, it's because of the difficulty of travel that they've never heard the gospel before. And so I had the skill as a pilot, and so we went over to provide transportation for the church planning missionaries that were going to be working in these different villages. And so I was a helicopter pilot, and our main role, it was providing transportation, but it was also we saw our main ministry as an encouragement and kind of a mentoring and just beyond physical needs, just making sure these missionaries were really doing okay and having their needs met, and just being a real connection for them to the outside world, and a support to them in their ministries. And so we were flying for I guess about 15 different over the time we were there, about 20 different language groups that had church planning happening, and then by the end there was about 15. So it was super exciting, and it was just thrilling to be a part of it. And we came back a few times to the church and shared some specifics from that. But it was it's been a really, really exciting thing, and a huge privilege to be involved in it. That's for sure.
Totally.
I was just going to add that being an encouragement and a friend to those families. When I first went in with Mike by helicopter to visit a family, it was so weird when we left by helicopter to see them on the ground, essentially alone, no other English speakers, nothing, they were part of a completely different culture that wasn't their own. And I was like, wow, it really is fun to visit these people because they really like it.
Yeah. There's also, it's because it's a multi-year process for these families to do that kind of a ministry. It's more than a 10-year commitment for them. Their first few years, there are no believers, there's no Christians, there's no, they haven't had the Bible in their language, and there's no understanding of the gospel, and things are, tense in the village and tough. And at the very beginning, everything's happy and fun. And then there's just a lot of difficult times for a while they're learning language and, learning all about the culture before they get to the point where they can start sharing. And so during those years, we felt like that was some of really where we had the biggest ministry to those missionaries, because once there were believers, they had then something in common with these people. And that things really changed at that point. And there was still tough times for them, but it was really different. At the beginning, it was really lonely. So it was a huge privilege to be a part of getting to kind of walk through that with them.
And super remote, just having little kids. A lot of the families were just normal families like ours with young kids. And I mean, us living in Papua New Guinea felt like a lot, But then I saw the kind of sacrifices those people were making, and it was 10 times as hard as what I thought was hard, like
Yeah.
I just was always overwhelmed by that kind of sacrifice, and
Yeah, and it's been such an incredible ministry to be able to be that encouragement, right? To be that presence, to be the face and the encouragement that even provides not just physical needs, but spiritual encouragement, relational encouragement along the way. That, I mean, really is the only thing that without that, like, people can't be on the field, right?
Yeah.
They need that support in very direct ways. So after, and I know you've been doing that for, so how long have you been in PNG now?
For 10
was it 10 years?
Yeah.
10 years. Yeah. So after 10 years, then the beginning of the pandemic, and really just the beginning of 2020 generally, was kind of crazy for everybody. But it was particularly crazy for you.
It was.
Can you explain, just to kind of be update on everybody about what took place and how you ended up then back here in the States?
Yeah, we were scheduled to return last summer for our home assignment time, our furlough, where we would come back and spend, a number of months in North America. And that was a regular thing every couple of years. But, COVID started at the beginning of that year. But it was really in that part of the world. You stop me if there's something to say, but in that part of the world, it was kind of untouched by COVID. Like, we were hearing stories from North America and on the news from the rest of the world, but there were no cases in Papua New Guinea. And so things, like, at first we didn't know what was going to happen or how it would even really restrict us. And then after a few months, things started to get locked down. And because Papua New Guinea realized, like, they don't have much medical care. Like, there's approximately 6 million people, and I think there's 500 doctors in the whole country. And there's only a handful of hospitals, and there's no road access. So really, they realize, like, if COVID goes around, it's going to be devastating. And so they did, like, take it pretty seriously. So before it was even happening, they started restricting travel, domestic travel and international travel, and then even all of our missionary travel was stopped for a time. And so, like, all of a sudden, we started realizing how serious and how much this was actually going to impact, because we have, all these different families. I was flying for about 15 locations. Each of those have approximately 3 families. And then there's also airplane locations. So we had a lot of people that were out in remote villages that where people are gardening for food, but the missionaries don't have their own gardens. They're really busy just doing their literacy and Bible translation and whatever, don't have time to do that. And so to have all of a sudden, they can't be a burden on the people for food. Like, we usually are bringing in their food. So that we started realizing, like, if we can't do this domestic travel, we probably need to get a special permission from the government and actually pull everybody out. And so that there was just a lot of, like, scrambling and trying to figure out things all the time. But in the end, actually, most people were able to stay, and the government ended up, because we were providing, like, essential medical care and other things for these people in these remote areas. I mean, the government made it a high priority to keep us operational, as long as we weren't, we were taking really serious precautions for preventing spreading COVID. But so that things continued on, but with restrictions. So every flight we did at that point, really for this last year even, every flight had to get specific permission from the government COVID task force. So you'd apply, give the reasons for the flight, who was on board, and then they would take a day or two to process that request. And so it made it, things got way more complicated for the aviation department to keep up with the logistics of everything that was needed and getting it approved. But we were able to keep it going. So that was really exciting. And then, so it stopped all the international travel, which involves some of the missionaries that are coming back from North America. And so for a while, we just put our plans on hold and just decided we're going to stay and not come back in the summer and just, keep helping through the crisis. And that went into last summer. And basically, because just like here, things were changing, like, daily. In the end, we ended up having enough people in the aviation department that they could spare us leaving by the end of the summer. And so And then there was just a small window where PNG opened their international travel back up and allowed some aid workers to travel on chartered flights out of the country. And so through the US Embassy helping us, we were able to get on one of those flights and get out. And so it was just kind of, we didn't know until the last second, and then we jumped on the opportunity, and we're glad we did. So we ended up in America.
Like what? So I mean, but like the last second, like when did you find out that you were?
Well, within a couple of weeks, right? I guess we
It was
had
less than 2 weeks.
less than 2 weeks notice. So
First,
it
was
and
like,
Mike
we're
told
going.
me about these flights, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that.
because we also have to pack up.
Like, it's like
you're moving,
yeah.
so you're packing up a
like,
complete house and everything.
You're not just flying. You're not just flying standby. You're moving standby.
Yeah, you're moving.
It's like
and
you're moving everything like you have on standby.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And then to another country that's also in
Locked down.
Yeah, locked
Yeah,
down,
I
and
was
so we
like,
didn't know
what's the
what we were
point?
coming back to. So,
Why are we doing? I'm not sure.
but really, God kind of gave us a piece about it.
Yeah, he did.
In the last few days.
Well, he gave you the piece of it first, and then suddenly I was like, all right, like I'll do it. Let's go. Let's go now, and let's not talk about it anymore.
Oh yeah. So yeah, it was
And so
interesting.
So then you landed in the States.
We did. We went straight to Maryland, where Kelly's parents are, and spent a little bit of time with them. And that was kind of our first wake up call to how locked down things were here, and which was a surprise. And like everybody else, you're navigating like the government laws, but also just your own family members, and everybody has different ways they're responding to it. And so it was really complicated time to be trying to travel around and see people. That was for sure. And we didn't really realize that until we got on the ground.
No, we knew, but we just didn't know how much it would be annoying to us. Right? Like it was like
all the
really
differences.
does make me mad.
It was complicated. So we spent time there, which it did really limit who we got to see, and that was okay. Yeah. We just became okay with that, and we were still really glad to see our families. And then we did a trip to Canada, which again, that was another, that was, I don't know how things are now, but at that time, the border, we were permitted to cross it, but we ran into a lot of troubles actually when it came to the day of actually crossing. And so right. that was very stressful too. And so it was a crazy few months of a lot. Like we felt like you come back from Papua New Guinea where there's a lot of stress, and usually your time coming back is, to kind of like recharge and take things down a notch so you can kind of like let your body, vent from that stress. And it was an interesting year because it felt like we just kept being put into situations that were almost more stressful than what our lives were in PNG, And so it was tough, and you don't have a home, and you're just living out of your suitcases, and you're living with people. And so it was complicated, but it was good. Like at the same time, God took care of us through that whole thing. And then I also, so part of our time being back, I had some training planned, some flight training, and it was just time to see people and whatever. And so we had the training planned in Arizona, and we ended up leaving Canada and coming down to Arizona for me to do this training. And that was really the first time where we, had space to like just as a family, and that was good. Like we needed that for sure by that point. Yeah.
So then, when did you arrive in Arizona? What month? I'm trying to remember.
We got here the start of, or the very end of August.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's been a while.
And then from there, I mean, and not to, spoil the ending, but over the course of your time, it became clear to you actually that the Lord was leading you out of PNG more permanently, right? That you weren't going to go back. Like how did that come about?
Yeah, and that was not, it seems like a crazy year with COVID because it just makes everybody reevaluate life and their priorities and everything. And this decision actually was totally unrelated to COVID. We've actually been praying a lot about it for a few years now, and there was a number of changes happening in our organization, and a big one is they were changing the aviation program from what it was before, which was just the one helicopter. I was really, for most of the years we were there, I was the only pilot. And so and the priority of the aviation program was this like discipleship, mentorship ministry with church planners, and that was why we were there. Like we were happy. I was thrilled to be a pilot and happy to provide transportation for physical and supplies for physical needs, but really we were more like our hearts were like seeing these people be able to press on with their work and connect with them in a personal way. And the changes that were coming were our organization was wanting to get rid of the older large commercial helicopter we were using and replace it with 3 smaller ones, and then they were going to have about 5 helicopter pilots that would take over that program. And it was going to change to be more of a like kind of like an on-call schedule where your pilots are rostered for different flights, and it wouldn't be the same connection with the I felt like the same connection that I had currently had with these families, where because it takes a long time to gain people's trust. You're not to build that relationship where people feel like they can be really honest with you and tell you how things are really going, how they're really doing. And so we started just praying like, Lord, if this is, at first we didn't know if it would really happen or how, what the details were and how it would look or how it would impact our ministry. And over time, if that became more and more clear that this was definitely going to be a major change. And the fact that they ended up lining up the aircraft and all the pilots they needed to do it, it was kind of the first time where, like, not that we weren't needed, they were happy to keep us, but it was like, wow, it was a complete change to what our ministry would look like. And it was the first time ever that we actually like could just be like, well, we hadn't even been thinking about like, Lord, do you have something else for us? Like, would there be another ministry? You're just so like, you're going 110% all the time and just keeping up with what's going on. And honestly, you don't even really stop to like think about, would he have something else for us or anything? But this is the first time we really started praying about that. And actually both of us started really feeling like, I think the Lord really does have maybe something else. Like, I think that the way he's gifted us and there was just like, I wouldn't say like an unsettledness, like it just took it was a long process of being like, okay, Lord, we're open to it. Like, if you want to lead us to something else, then you make that really clear. And we just were really praying that way right up until COVID and everything. Like we were at the point before kind of COVID when we were starting to plan for our trip back that we're like, well, it's really hard to figure out those kind of details from Papua New Guinea. So we're like, maybe on this time when we return, we can start really sorting out the details for what that might look like or look at other opportunities. And anyway, in that, basically just before we left, there was a number of things that made it really clear to us that I think the Lord really is truly moving us on. And so but we wanted to be really sure. And sometimes, everything's stressful and you don't want to make like major life decisions when like in those kind of situations. So we felt like getting back would be a good thing. And that's what we did. We came back and then really during our time when we were in training in Arizona is when we were, praying like crazy. We were talking with you too. And really like asking the Lord if he'd have, and we both continue to just feel like I don't know what it is, but I think God has something different. And so we felt like we needed to take the step of faith to actually like move on and trust that he would provide us with what that would be.
Yeah. And I mean, there's been different times where it's not that like Papua New Guinea was always just easy and we'd never ever thought of like not doing this, but there were a lot of times where it was like either Mike felt really burnt out or I felt really burnt out, but neither one of us, like, we were able to encourage each other through it, like in those seasons where it felt really difficult. We never had peace to leave. Like, we knew that we were supposed to be there still and suffer through those hard things and see what God would do in them. And then this was very different because it started to just seem like God was saying, yeah, like I have some different purpose for you. Which was really odd because it's like, well, what would that be? Like not very many people live in Papua New Guinea. Like, why would you call us on from that? But it was like, it was clearly happening to us.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a huge, like, huge transition, huge, even just change of um, what for, I mean, now multiple decades, right? The Lord had
Hmm.
kind of had in front of you.
Yeah.
How do you, I mean, uh, maybe start with you, Kelly. Like, how do you process that? How did your kids process such a huge kind of
Hmm.
even life direction transition? Not just the geographical one, but just kind of the
Yeah.
life direction one.
I mean, I think it's just been a step by step thing,
Yeah.
really like as a family, it's doing each step that we've seen God shift, like possibly be moving us in a different direction has really been a family step. Um,
Mm,
and so that's helped, like, because our kids are so involved in everything that we do that um they, it's just it just was that way, and it started with like, okay, we're gonna start getting rid of our belongings in Papua New Guinea, like, and like, and the kids are like, well, what about our dog? and,
mm,
and what about, and it was like, yeah, I know, like we may see this dog again, but we may not. We're just gonna trust
mm,
that God's gonna show us what he's doing, and we don't really know, and that was
mm,
hard. It was really
It
hard.
was hard, but it actually was kind of neat to be able to walk through that with our kids. Like we weren't holding anything back from them. We just decided, let's just be really honest with them and let's trust
mm,
that God is going to actually like open doors and guide us or guide us back or whatever. And let's do that as a family and not, not just Kelly and I talking quietly in the back room. We felt like we wanted to share with the kids what we were sensing from the Lord and why. And we wanted to, talk to them about faith and how God took care of other people and guided them along. And
Uh-huh.
mm,
and we really wanted them to learn from this too, just like we were. Like you know, I can think of many. Everybody faces difficult things all through life, and you see how God meets your needs. And there was a number, and there's things like that all the way through our time in Papua New Guinea too. Like, I mean, times where like we couldn't do it and God came
mm,
through many times. But there's also like, there's a comfortableness of just like, yeah, I'm the helicopter pilot. I mean, what you do, what you're doing there, you're all this, and to actually like hold that all with open hands again to the Lord and say, like, do you have, I don't want to just be doing this because it's me pushing it. We
mm,
truly want to be open to following you. And then when you realize, like, when the kids were little, it's a lot easier, they're just tagging along. Now they're older and you want them to really like not become bitter, and you want them to understand,
mm,
and like we want to all see like the Lord really come through and be clearly guiding us. And
Mm-hmm.
I think what was exciting is there was hard things in that for sure. Like, yeah, we gave away our dog, and we also told our kids like the Lord could lead us back to Papua New Guinea. Like we could come back and pray through this, and He might guide us back, and then we'll just have to trust that He's going to provide us with what we need to move back.
mm, yeah.
So that's kind of where we were at when we came back, and I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
yeah, and the kids too, like so they were really pretty good about it, and I think it was a
Mm-hmm.
real faith builder for all of us. It was huge.
And you also had read through the book of Acts, like with a voice, and often, you would we would talk, even just the two of us, but also with a voice, um, about just how, the Spirit led the believers through the book of
Mm,
Acts. It wasn't just, they weren't they never, I mean, they faithfully did wherever they did what they were told, wherever they were put, but they also moved. And that believers often move, because when we sense what God tells us to do, we do it and we go
mm,
places, and we don't just get comfortable and stay in one place. And
Mm-hmm.
it would have been this would have been the year I would have just loved to stay in Papua New Guinea, really,
mm,
like, rather than move
Then
here.
add more transitions. Yeah.
And the kids were, I mean, they still sometimes, not as much now, but it's like, when is this COVID thing gonna be over? You know?
yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was a tough time for
Yeah.
them to come
It
here
was
as
the
far as trying to
worst.
make new friends or
Oh,
plug into
Yeah.
things. But
yeah.
yeah, and so so we, once we were in Arizona and we were praying as a family and personally like a ton and really, really seeking the Lord, it really continued for Kelly and I both, like individually and together, feeling really clear that the Lord had something else and that we were to just trust him and keep moving forward. And so that's what we just kept doing. We're like, okay, I'll do this training. I had to do it anyway. And then we were, starting to look at, okay, is there other ministries or what? How could the gifts and
yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit, right? Because I think it became clear to you as a family that this was what the Lord was doing. But I mean, I remember, us talking a few times late last year, and you were, I mean, in one sense, you were just looking for a job and saying, okay, what's next? This way. At the same time, you were also looking for like the next step in this calling, right? The Lord had very obviously given you these gifts and this training, and for a long time, it felt like there wasn't anything there. Like there was, like you knew you were leaving something, but you didn't know what you were going to.
No, it was so strange.
Yeah, well, I mean, can you tell us the story of just kind of that and how you ended up?
I mean, it's very humbling because it makes you feel like, are we really hearing the Lord clearly like we think we are? Yeah. Because like you would think, I guess ideally you wish that this really cool opportunity presented itself and you knew it was from the Lord, and you make this like step up from what you're currently doing to something else that's like really exciting in a way to serve him, and this was not that. This was like, we clearly knew that we needed to step out from what we were doing, and we believed God had something for us, but literally nothing happened. I mean, we started looking at options. None of those really panned out. Then we started feeling, okay, well, we don't want to, we have supporters, including the church, behind us, financially helping us. And we don't know what we're doing next, but it's pretty clear to us that we're not returning to Papua New Guinea. And so we felt the pressure of like, this can't just take forever to make this decision. Like we need to, be good stewards of all of that. And so it was like, well, let's just start looking at jobs then. And then maybe from there, the Lord will guide us to something else. And so I started applying to just
for the record, not pressure from us.
No, not from you. No. Sure,
no, I mean, we were so, I mean, but I want to highlight the fact that actually, I mean, and it's not just me. I think this is our entire church family. Like it really has been our joy to be with you in this process but at the same time, I totally get personally, like I totally get.
This was a personal pressure.
And you just feel that internal.
And the church were being so encouraging and so great to us through this whole process because.
But that's still a real dynamic, right? You still totally feel that, and have to process through that.
Like the Lord didn't just provide through that either. In fact, that was really humbling because I thought, okay, well, I've got all this great experience, and like finding work will be no problem. Well, it wasn't the case. Like literally, I couldn't find anything. And so then it was like, well, do we look at something outside of aviation or whatever else? And we truly we believe the Lord has some kind of ministry. Like we want to be serving him. Like we're not like, I don't know what it is or how, but we are trusting that the Lord has something like that for us. And so anyway, we were looking at all different options, and basically came down to like into the early part of this year, or not, I guess it was February-ish.
Right. I mean, it was months of waiting. It was just like months of painful waiting.
Yeah. I ended up having a couple like connections through friends, actually other missionaries we had flown with, who are now working for other companies in North America. And so a couple of them, helped put my name out there and was, trying to help me along. Well, that was really the only thing we could find that actually like was a job offer, was just a summer job. And it would involve us moving our family to Alaska and me just flying for the summer doing tours, which is like glacier tours. And that really wasn't like a great way to provide for our family or even a long-term solution of any kind. So it felt like
the option on the table. The option on the table was to move your whole family to Alaska for a job for the summer.
Right. Yeah. And so that obviously just like, at first we just wrote that off as like that's not going to happen. But then as time goes by, you're like, I don't know. It's the only thing. Yeah. And so we're starting to seriously look at doing that, even though it wasn't, because I thought, well, maybe that'll just like as COVID things start opening up, maybe there'll be more opportunities into the fall. But basically, we were still praying like crazy, and this was a time too when sometimes things, I feel like there's times where you really hear the Lord clearly, and there's other times there's just really quiet. And this felt like it was a time where the Lord was really quiet, and we just still had a peace about what was happening. It just wouldn't you say that a little bit? Like,
yeah,
it just felt like, I mean, there wasn't, I don't know, there just wasn't any like clear answers, and there wasn't, I don't know, we just didn't know how to proceed. And so
there was a peace about it, but there was also just such unsettledness. Like, if it would have been a lot more peaceful if it didn't feel so unsettling to be like, here we are in North America in this, like season of waiting where our kids are like, everything's on hold, our whole life. Like,
Yeah.
what are we gonna, like, we have been part of a great church here, but it was sort of like, let's just make some quick decisions about where to land during this season, because we don't know we don't assume it will be long, or but just, schooling, everything, it's all just kind of gets put on into a place where, with transit, with knowing that there were always more potential transitions, we just were like, okay, how can we make this work? We couldn't put the kids in soccer or anything, and they're dying for that kind of stuff. Like, but just was, it was hard.
we knew there's probably a move happening somewhere.
And they didn't want, and then we'd try to make friends, or I was wanting to make friends, and the kids were like, why would we ever make a friend? Because we'll probably move. And
so it was tough days.
it was really hard. Lots of attitudes that go along with that.
And and I think too, you start thinking of there's so many examples in scripture of, it wasn't like Job. There's so many people that have had it so much worse than we've had it, but where you're going through difficult things and that God cares more about what he's teaching you and how he's growing you than he does about any kind of results that you're producing. And like, that was a bit of this time. Like, we went from, in Papua New Guinea, I can think of all the like hundreds and thousands of flights I've done and what we've accomplished. And there's truly thousands of new believers in that country that were a direct part of the church planning we got to be involved in. And like, that was all super, super exciting. And now we're in this time of like just quiet, and it's like, what are we even doing this year? And why is this going this way? And what are you trying to teach us? And yet the Lord was, truly, it was such a faith building thing, like to really, it was humbling. And it was also just like a time of just really remembering who God is, and that he doesn't change, and everything else is changing, but he doesn't. And he's the same, and he still loves us, and he, has a plan for us. And so, anyway, we basically got down to where we decided, okay, if, not to make like an ultimatum for the Lord, but it was like, in fact, it was kind of presented to us that the job in Alaska was really, the offer was on the table for a specific date. They needed to know, because they had other people they were considering for the position. And in the end, they were nice to give me a little extra time, but basically in the end, they just told me a date and were like, you have to tell us yes or no by this date. And which normally we would have probably just said no, because it seemed like such a terrible option. But because it was the only thing, we just kept praying, like, Lord, something else. I had many applications in for other things, so we just kept hoping something would happen. Never did. And we got right to the morning where we had to call that the owner in Alaska up and commit to that job. So Kelly and I, we went on a walk. We just stepped out of the house because I just wanted to pray with her. Like, it's hard to, sometimes, when in fact, we had Kelly's parents were here visiting. My
parents had just arrived the night before.
And so, you've got company and the kids are here, and we're going through like
super easy context
decisions we've ever had. Yeah. And so we were like, let's get out of the house and just pray about this. And I guess at that point, here's the other little part of it too, is like with my, aviation isn't like everything to me, but there's parts of that where you have to stay current enough flying or you're not a marketable option anymore. And so I was getting to the point, because of the COVID year and how little I had flown during this last year, that I was becoming unmarketable as a pilot. And so it was also like, if we don't take this Alaska thing, that might be the end of my aviation career, which, that was actually a good point to get to for me too, because truly, like, that's not my identity. My identity is really in the Lord. And like, we want our lives to be for people and for the gospel and not about flying. So we went to go on this walk, which really we wanted to pray about it. And I just wanted, Kelly, we were both going to be making some big sacrifices to go up there for the summer. And so I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page. Well, as soon as we walked out of the house, the phone rang, and really I hadn't had any phone. The phone hadn't been ringing. So
he was like, oh, great. It's probably scam likely.
Yeah. I thought it was this person in Alaska calling us for the commitment. So I thought, man, we haven't even had the time to talk this through together, like one last time. So I answered the phone, and here it was a company here in Phoenix that I had applied to, what was it, like 4 months earlier, and heard nothing. And when I had heard nothing, I actually followed up with them just to make sure they got my application. And I thought some of what they did sounded like it would be a really good fit with my experience from Papua New Guinea. And so I wanted to follow up, and I did, and they didn't respond to that. And basically ended up being a dead end. Never heard anything from them until the morning we were supposed to commit to Alaska. They called me up, and that was the other thing. Kelly and I had been, we decided, like, let's pray. What we thought, but what do we really need? Like, one big thing we felt like was we don't need another move right now. Just like with where our family's at, and this whole last year and all the travel and stress and the transition to moving back from overseas and so many things, we felt like if we could just stay in one place for a while, like, so we were actually praying for that, asking the Lord. I mean, it was hard to be asking for specific things like that when it felt like, whatever he wanted, we were willing to do for sure. But we thought if he would let us stay here. Well, so when I had started inquiring with other companies and with where I was doing some flight training at, I was talking to them, and basically they told me Phoenix would not be an option for me because of partly the number of military flight schools that are here, and also just the number of military helicopter operations that are happening around here. There's just there's more pilots than there are jobs in this area. And so basically we had just written that off as not an option. Well, the phone rings. It's this company here in Phoenix. They said, we are finally getting around to these applications, and it looks like you're a great fit for maybe what we have going on. And I'm like, well, I would love to consider that, but within an hour or two, I have to commit to this other thing in Alaska. Like, I'm down to hours. So they got me right in that same day to have an interview, and then I flew with them the same day. And the whole thing literally came together within hours. And this is after months and months of waiting. Nothing, like absolutely nothing. And I guess what was really exciting about it was these are not believers. It's a commercial company, but their main contract is with a Native American Indian reservation that live in the bottom of the Grand Canyon without road access. And everything is flown to them, all their food, their supplies, in fact, their animal feed, everything is flown in. And that's the contract they have. And they basically, a lot of the interview was like, this isn't just a flying job. And they started listing out, like, how the cultural things that are hard to navigate, and so many aspects of this job were exactly what I had been doing in Papua New Guinea. And so, like, I just had no clue this would exist within North America. And so it was like, it felt, we just both were like, this is the Lord. Like, there's no way this whole thing could have come about just from us, like the timing of it, but also what it was. It felt like, so then we got home, talked to Kelly's parents. Like we said, I think we just found a job. And they're like, well, we know missionaries who work in the Grand Canyon with a Native American tribe that lives there. And we thought, like, what are the chances and whatever. Well, so Kelly's mom's right away like calling up her old college roommate who now is a missionary down there.
She
Sure enough,
hasn't talked to her for 45 years.
yeah, it's a hold of her. And sure enough, they live there. They live right in this very village that I'll be flying to. They have never had any Christians working there with them or flying for them. And they said they've actually like actively prayed for that. Like they really wanted one of the pilots to just be a believer. And they were, telling us about the small church that they have down in the tribe and the discipleship that's going on and the needs there. And the whole thing was super exciting to us. Like it was just such a
Unreal.
perfect fit to what we had been doing in Papua New Guinea. In all ways, like there's also tough parts of like now that I'm actually doing this job, it's like there's a lot of difficulty. It's not a normal job in America. It is really complicated working with a different culture and different expectations, and at the same time, it's like so much of that is exactly what I have had experience doing, and it's also I've seen this whole process play out in Papua New Guinea too, where you have these groups of unbelievers that haven't had access to the gospel. And this is the same kind of thing. You have a very small church that's really hungry. They're growing in their faith, but they're really young believers. And then you have, the majority of their family and neighbors are not believers, and there's persecution and trouble. And now we get to like be a direct part of that. We're still figuring out exactly what this looks like. So right now, I've just, it took a couple months of training where I was flying with other staff members the whole time. Now I'm finally, just the last 2 weeks, I'm on my own down there. And these missionaries have not flown in yet with me. So we'll see. I'll get to meet them soon. With COVID, everything's really locked down in the village. They really, don't want that getting down into that, into the tribe. So, so we'll see. It's slowly opening up, but anyway, we believe very clearly that the Lord provided us this. Like it's still, we feel like we don't know all of what it involves, but we feel like there's some reason that the Lord wants us here. And so
it's unreal.
Yeah.
Like it's unreal. I mean, after all the waiting, I mean, this is the type of thing that you couldn't even make up. It would sound too ridiculous.
Yeah.
It sounds kind of ridiculous telling it, actually.
Yeah, and it's really wild. And and the other kind of neat thing about it so far, and I don't know where it's going to go, but a lot of this job, it's I'll arrive there in the morning. I'll be there for like a 10-hour day, and we're making up maybe 50 loads of between animal feed and food for people and whatever. I'm working with the same small group of Native American guys that are employees of our company as well. They just do the ground crew stuff. And so I've had already just so much time with these guys, and we've become already really good friends, and they're not believers. And so I just feel like we'll see where this all goes, but I think the Lord has something for us there. Like he's going to use us in some way. And we're just, so it feels like it's, it's still like definitely a journey of faith for sure, and we still don't see exactly what it's going to look like. And it's so different than when you join a mission agency and it's all laid out for you, exactly what to expect. This is like, wow, we're on our own here, and yet, so maybe in some ways the Lord is using our time in Papua New Guinea. That was the training, and now we're on our own, but it's exciting. So we're just trusting him, and we're following him, and we'll just see where he continues to lead us.
What an incredible kindness. What an incredible, I mean, right? Like the Lord didn't even have to do that.
No.
Right. And he still would have been so good and so kind and so provided you in so many ways, and just like went over and above, and obviously is knitting. I mean, had this piece, this opportunity in mind the whole time.
Yeah.
And I know that there's part of us, right, that's like, well, you could have told me sooner.
Yeah. There's, I really wish that, but at the same time, there are things, when you walk through that, there are dark days, and yet, it's a different way to experience your relationship with the Lord, like where you really are dependent, and you realize, wow, it's not, I don't know, he doesn't owe me anything, and he doesn't owe us anything. Like we've like we've been serving him all along, and that has highs and lows, and like, and now, he's still the same, and we're, if he chooses to, what might appear to us like not coming through for us or something, that, he doesn't owe that to us. Like, our job is just to continue to be faithful to him, and to be trying to, grow in faith and grow in our knowledge of his word, and to be trying to follow him. And but then to have it, I guess that was what was even all the more sweet and exciting at the end, then to have God come through in such a clear way after such a long time of what felt like silence. And it was super humbling, and just super exciting that he would, I guess, reach out to us in a personal way like that, to let us know clearly that he hasn't forgotten about us, and he had a plan for us all along.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember hearing that story when you called that week, right? When we talked about it. And I just remembered, like, I remember exactly where I was standing, because I was just dumbfounded. I was just like, you kept going, and I was like, what? Like,
Yeah.
and it welled up so much worship in me. And I think in our church family too, that's why I was so excited to have you share this story, but also the entire story, right? The bittersweetness of moving on from a place that you'd invested so much in, and also the Lord's kind, good direction in it, step by step, not always clear, definitely not always easy, and not even perfectly clear. Right? Just because there was this piece doesn't mean that it's all gonna add up even now.
No,
right?
No. And that's okay. And like,
it is.
And so it's, it's just a totally different way to experience the Lord. And like, we're just super thankful for that. Like right now, if this opportunity ended and there was something else the Lord had, or he was quiet again, like, I don't know. It's just these kind of things that really are just, I don't know. We can think of many things like that happen through our time in Papua New Guinea, from being tight on finances and having the Lord come through for us, or providing something we needed, just very specific, that we couldn't figure out on our own, or just different things. There's many things like that. I feel like as missionaries that come up, that where the Lord comes through in a way that, because you're so dependent, like there's no way to do it on your own. And anyway, and this was like that too. It's so weird to have that happen here in North America, because that's not, it feels like sometimes like that it should be easy, but because it's a place where we can figure out things for ourselves a lot. It's hard to really, sometimes I feel like for myself anyway, it's hard to always operate by faith. And this situation pushed us where it was completely by faith, and there was nothing more we could do on our own strength, and then the Lord came through. It was just, it was amazing. Yeah.
Well, and it's such a comfort, to me and to our kids, that we, like, having walked through this, but having seen how God orchestrated this, and having it become something that was really part of our whole family. Like Mike, he got that phone call while he was outside standing there, and I ran in, and I was like, guys, the phone rang. And it sounds like maybe some kind of job opportunity. Like he's talking to someone about a job, and it, like, we need to pray right now. And we all kind of huddled together, and I was just like thankful that God, he didn't make it clear to one of us. He made it something that we were all sure of, and we really needed that for our kids. I mean, I think even more than we needed it for ourselves, so that as those anchors are so strong, it just, it helps with all the hard things.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for sharing even just so much of this story with our church family, right? Not just with me, but being willing to share it. It does just demonstrate in so many real and practical ways how good and kind and how wise he is, even with his timing, even when it doesn't make sense to us. But before we wrap up, I also want to just give you a chance if there's anything else you wanted to share with our Cornerstone Church
Definitely.
family.
Like
Yeah.
there's so many things, but I mean, a huge one is just how thankful we are for Cornerstone. Like each of you, each of the pastors, all the people in the church, like actually, I mean, nobody has reached out to us in our ministry like your church has. And it was like the place we looked forward to most visiting when we were back. And it was you were the hugest encouragement and a practical blessing to us too when it was needed. And just, I don't know, we can't say enough things of how thankful we are for that. Like, in that, some of that, like these transitions tough because I don't know how often we're going to get out there. It wasn't real often before, but I really hope we can. We're really looking forward to getting out to California again and visiting you guys. You were an absolute huge blessing and kept us going on the field. And there's so many of people there that we've kept up with, and we know were praying for us and remembered us when we came back and knew what we were doing and cared, and we're truly partners in this ministry. It was super, super exciting. And and it was just really fun to see the church functioning like the way it really should be functioning. Like, it was really, really exciting, where it wasn't our ministry, it was collectively we were doing this in Papua New Guinea.
And we love, we really just love you all. And it feels a little bit like telling this story is sort of, I don't know. I'm like, I don't ever want it to be that we don't have a relationship with Cornerstone.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Because we love you guys.
Well, we really, really love you guys too. And it's, I mean, I know that you know that how mutual that is, and that this isn't the end of the relationship in that sense, right? It's just, it's a transition. A transition is, I mean, you're a lot closer than you were.
Yes, we are.
And if previously we only got to see each other once every 4 years, like we can at least shoot for that, right?
We'll be closer now. And I think the neat thing is, like, really, we were always just thrilled. In fact, we'd be in Papua New Guinea sharing with others what Cornerstone was doing in Los Angeles, and like how excited we were, so excited about the ministries you guys have happening there. And then you were doing things in Papua New Guinea as an extension through us and other parts of the world, and we feel like that still. We still feel like we're really part of your church, and now we're here with the Havasupai people in Arizona, and like, truly, if something happens there, like, we will be in touch with you, and we'd love you guys to continue praying for us and whatever way the Lord might use us there.
And too, I mean, I think the other part of it is that we haven't just felt like sent by you, but we've felt like Cornerstone and the believers in Cornerstone are all just like, we're all just part of a body, all in different ways, like seeking to do what God has for us, and seeking to obey him and make him known in all different ways. And anyway, we have loved that.
Yeah, we do too. I'm so thankful for that, and so thankful for both of you. I'm confident, Lord willing, that on the other side of it's only made more complicated, like everything else right now. But on the other side of all this, that I look forward to getting to see you guys, whether it's here or in Phoenix. We're gonna figure out one way or another.
Sounds good.
But we do miss you guys, and I'm so thankful though for both the part of our church family that you've been, and the extension of our church family that you still are.
Yeah, thank you.
And
we sure
for
feel like that.
the work that the Lord's continuing to do. So, continue to pray. Actually, before we go, can I pray for you?
We'd love that.
Yeah. Father, I am so, so grateful, Lord, for both Mike and Kelly and their entire family, and for the ways that you have knit our lives together. From meeting them out there in the middle of nowhere in Arizona, whatever it was, 14 years ago, Lord, and the friendship and relationship, Lord, that we didn't even know you had in store, and how you've woven our lives, I know our families together, our church families together over the course of these years. And Father, I thank you, God, for your incredible kindness to them, for your wisdom and your perfect timing, for the ways that you have directed them exactly exactly where they are now and during this season. And I pray, Lord, that you would just facilitate and continue the dynamics of and the blessings of this relationship here during our time on earth in the ways that we can, and we look forward to celebrating it in fullness together for eternity. And Lord, both pray for their kids during this transition, and thank you, God, for the kindness of allowing them to get to stay there for this season. And also, Lord, pray for their future ministry in the local church, in through this role, flying into the Grand Canyon, and for the people there as well, God, that you would continue, that your gospel would continue to spread, that you would continue to bring and draw people out for your name through the sacrifices and the intentionality of Mike and Kelly and the others there as well. And so, well, there's so much to praise you for. You're so good, so kind, and so loving to us, Father. And so we just praise you and lift all this up, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thanks a lot, you guys. We love you. I look forward to seeing you again soon. And to everybody that listening, we love you too. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for being a part of this church family and for all the ways that you've supported Mike and Kelly over the years. Yeah, we love you, and we'll see you one way or another on Sunday.